Around the car, it's all bodywork in good condition. The only downside is the alloy wheels have been scuffed in all four corners. It has the projector headlights and front fog lights. And this model has silver door mirror caps. It's not designed to look sporty or fast in any way, but it is practical and it's not a bad looking wee car. Personally, I find it better looking than the Nissan Note, which would share a lot of parts with this car. And the fuel filler in here. Just shows here how handy this wee space is. You can leave stuff just sitting here, and if you hit the brakes when you're driving along, you don't have to worry about stuff flying at the front floor. Inside, the only bit of cosmetic wear that I noticed is this bit of the steering wheel here. It's a faux leather that Renault have fitted. Seems to go bad on the Clios. You would notice it quite often. It just starts flaking away. It wouldn't be too expensive to have someone cover the steering wheel with proper leather. The other bit of wear is just this side bolster on the front seat. You could say that the seats are half leather, but this isn't leather, this is just vinyl. The initial versions had full leather. But it only was offered with cream. Not very practical if you're looking to keep it clean. If there was a version of this car with full black leather, it would be very handy for just keeping it clean, wipe it down. But this car anyhow has half leather, being the dynamic model. As for the dashboard, it's all fairly utilitarian. I think this is slightly soft touch, this area here, but everything is easy to wipe down. This has been handy at the moment, given that you have to disinfect everywhere all the time. This dashboard has resisted Dettol and other disinfectants quite well. I'm not seeing any sort of discoloration or wear and tear on the dashboard, which is good. I don't like the piano black trim on this car. Like any car, these new cars with piano black trim, it just is a fingerprint and scratch magnet. Once you clean it, you might get smears or scratches. Some versions of the Modus had silver panels here. You could paint them, but then you would lose these wee graphics, which has a fair bit more information on there. This is the version with the manual air conditioning. It might be a lot simpler for some people just to use it this way. And the digital climate control some versions had. This is your air direction controls. Heater on the outside ring at the centre. Fan speed. Recirculation and fresh air. That's air conditioning and heated rear window. You can unlock all the doors from here. That's the only indication to tell you that the doors are locked. There's no snib or indicator on the doors. Some cars would have that, so that's all you have to see, that the doors are locked. Although if you do go to open them, they open from the inside anyhow. It isn't a deadlock. That's the hazard warning lights. And the OBD port on this car is down here. If to pinch the top down and then pull it back. Bin is again just the same as the passenger side, quite big, and you can store plenty of stuff in it. This being the dynamic model, there's full electric windows front and back, and then this child lock system, not only does it stop the rear windows from being opened, but it also activates the child lock from here. So if you turn it on, so if you deactivate it, it's then possible to open the back door from inside the car. Pop the window up and down, but as soon as you turn it on, child locks are activated from inside the car, as is the back windows. It's handier than having to go around each individual door and doing that, and having rear electric windows that you can turn off from here is quite handy. So here in front of the gear stick you have two cup holders and a small storage compartment. Sort of place you can throw keys and other bits and pieces. Cup holder isn't great. That's the big Red Bull can, and it would move about if you were driving along, but it's a good enough spot to set it just while you're stationary. There's of course the way to store a cup in any car that doesn't have one. Don't know why people complain about not having cup holders, because that works fine. Up above there's sun visors both sides, a card holder here, and a mirror on the driver's side too. You don't get a grab handle. There's grab handles in the car with coat hangers in the back. The passenger side gets one, the driver's side doesn't. I don't know why not. I always find it nice to have a grab handle here. There's probably holes in there that you could retrofit a grab handle, but I just don't understand why cars don't have 4 as standard. In front of the driver's this wee handy storage compartment here. I have my glasses and a bottle of hand sanitizer there at the moment. The speedometer sits here in the centre. It might be in the centre because it keeps the dash cheap to convert from left to right hand drive. This here section here from this line above, I'm guessing is very much like a Clio, which you just take the top off. Makes them bulbs behind that harder to change, but it does make it easy to change the airbag if you ever have a smash. A quick glance and you can tell the speed you're doing. Good big numbers. The rev counter above it. It all has a fairly good refresh rate as well. That's the coolant temperature, and that's the fuel gauge. Then you have a trip computer. Cycle through the different options on the trip computer. That's the mileage, how many miles have been done since the trip computer was last reset, how many gallons of fuel has been used, the current average. I'm doing mainly short journeys at the moment, possibly a heavy right foot, but this car can achieve phenomenal fuel economy. On a run you're definitely into the 60s. No reason why you couldn't get it doing 70 or above if you drive it really easy. That's the range until the car's empty. A few other options there. Service reminder, I reset that when I changed the timing belt and did the service in the car. And then the speed limiter. It's strange that they've put the button to activate the cruise control and the speed limiter down here beside the handbrake. That's the speed limiter when you press it back, and that's the cruise control when you press it forward. And it sits in the middle, it's at neither. But why that switch is there, I'm not sure. It would have made more sense to be in around here, because on the steering wheel you have the button to go up and down for the speed. This turns off the speed limiter and this resumes it, or if it was on cruise control mode it would resume the cruise control and turn it off. But that switch being down there, it's in a slightly strange position. The speed limiter is quite simple in its operation. The accelerator pedal you can press down to this level and you feel it stop. It's best described as a detent, because if you press it a wee bit extra, it goes in further. It's like pressing a button. So it does mean if you wedge your foot to the floor like that, it overrides the speed limiter. So if you do have an emergency where you do need to overtake them, it's there. To the right here you have the clock and the temperature, and then the radio display. I'll not let it play too long because YouTube takes a fit if the radio's on or hears a song. So it's just a basic radio that come fitted in the car. The good thing about this radio is that you have these controls behind the steering wheel, which actually work out better than being on the steering wheel because they're always there. You've got volume up, volume down, mute. You can cycle through your radio stations with this, or will change the source. And then on this radio, having a CD player and a radio tuner, you can go between different bands and the CD. That Clio there is an iMusic, which has a Bluetooth radio fitted from the factory. Now it is a 2011 or 2012, but the radio in it does support Bluetooth streaming and telephone calls. It would be nice if this car had Bluetooth. It's the only real thing it's missing out on. I have this funny holder that came with the car that you can put your phone into. it did have Bluetooth streaming, it would be very handy. Shows what doors are open. It's quite useful. This here to the left is the gear change indicator. I'll show you when the car is driving how that operates. Then down here you have the headlight height adjuster. If there's a trailer on behind the car, or the car has been heavily loaded, you can adjust the headlight aim. And this is the wiper stock. Front wipers coming down with that. That's the back wiper. And the intermittent speed for the front wipers. On the left you've got your indicator stocks, fog lights front and rear. The warning lights are shown here on this wee panel. It does have a seatbelt alert, which is quite annoying because if you're driving around on the yard without your seatbelt on, it does start beeping. I always do wear my seatbelt when I'm on the road, but sometimes when you're just tootling around the yard, it's handy just to have your seatbelt off, and if the car didn't beep it would be a lot nicer. Electric mirrors on both sides, which do fold. Steering wheel has adjustment for brake, but not reach. This car is very useful with passenger seat. It's a feature would be great if it was in more cars. The base of the passenger seat lifts out like this. And it just means if you're driving along you can store stuff in this cavity in the seat and it doesn't roll about when you hit the brakes. There's just a few things for example. But I have found myself actually using that feature there. It's quite handy. You could set a laptop here if you were so busy that you needed to use a laptop in your car. There's also storage compartments on the front floors, both sides of the car. Cars did have the option of a storage box under the front seats. This car doesn't have that fitted, but there is quite a lot of space under the front seats to do that. And in the front you've got this big glove box. There's a bit of space taken up by the fuse box on this car. Something a wee bit like Peugeot, that the right hand drive cars lose a bit of glove box space because the fuse box is sitting on the left hand side of the car. But there's still enough space in there even with the owner's manual. A few wee storage compartments are odd. This is a pen holder and a card holder. Passenger side door bin. They're good big door bins. The boot on the Grand Modus is one of its best features. There's plenty of space and it's just a good square practical load bay that you have. So the entire bench can be slid forward or back. And the seats have a 60-40 folding arrangement. There's a good flat boot floor. The spare wheel is underneath the car, so I had the parcel shelf out of the car because I have a dog. And it's not really very fair on the dog to sit in the boot with no view out. So I took the parcel shelf out and left it aside, but I'll show you it come back in. As a back seat passenger, you can pull this handle underneath the seat and bring the seat forward or back for more legroom, depending on what you need. Headroom's quite acceptable in the back, and as is legroom, as you'd expect with a high roof in this type of car. There's Isofix seat anchor points in the back seats. You have a proper seat belt for the rear passenger. It does mean you have the safety of a full 3-point seat belt. So this first bit goes into this buckle here. It says centre. You can pass this over. Take it into the other side, and now you have a full 3-point seat belt, which is a lot better than any lap belt that you would normally get in the middle of a car. The headrests in the normal position are a bit uncomfortable for anyone. Thankfully they do move up. The only problem is when they're up they might obstruct the rear vision. Back down. Seat forward, you can tilt it. Put the seats back down, you just do that. seatbelt to get snagged, so it's easy enough when you put the seat back and forward just to reach in here and get the seatbelt back. In the back you have storage pockets in the back of the front seats, and there's also this. I don't know if that was intentional, but it does work out to be a handy wee storage compartment for maybe pens or something like that. And the back seat passengers get a reading light, and being the dynamic model, this has electric windows in the back and 4 speakers. Parcel shelf has a Velcro feature here which sticks onto the back of the seat, so if you move it forward, this part here just stops your items falling down into the boot. This part here just maintains the cover over the boot so you can't see what's in the boot. My dog has chewed this bit here, but that's how it's supposed to be. Access to the fasteners that hold the rear lights on to change the bulbs there. This model here doesn't have any parking sensors. It's one thing it would benefit from, but there is this metal parking tow bar, sorry, that it has. I don't know who fitted it, but it's actually been a useful wee tow car. Been used for a few jobs around the farm at the moment, and it can tow fairly well for all the size of the engine. This car isn't fitted with the automatic headlights, the dynamic model, but however, whatever way Renault wire the headlights up, it's quite handy, because if you turn the key off, headlights are still on. As soon as you open the door, they turn off. So in effect, you never need to turn off the headlight switch. It's always just automatic. I leave the headlight switch on all the time. It's a bit like a Volvo daytime running lights, but it does work out handy. You don't have to worry about it. As soon as you turn the car on, the lights are on. Then you turn the car off, open the door, and the headlights go out. This is directional headlights. They're not quite like an old Citroen DS that follow the steering, but when you turn right or left, there's an extra wee bulb in the headlight unit that turns on with the steering wheel. So if I'm turning right here, you see that one lights up. Turn left, you get that there. Initially it seemed a bit of a gimmick, but you'd actually use the car at night time driving along. It can be quite useful to have this feature. This is just one thing I like about working on the Modus, is that it has very well defined jack points. Nice big arrows in the sills, and they're actually quite beefy jacking points. It does make it easy just to line up when you want to put the car in the lift to do any sort of maintenance work. So starting at the front of the car, everything's covered. There's a cover underneath the radiator and this big cover under the engine bay. Keeps the engine bay clean. But you do have to remove the part to change oil. That's just the way of all new cars. One thing to check on Moduses and Clios is this radiator support. I did the video on this car changing this part. They tend to rust, and it sometimes can be an MOT failure. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the subframe, but the radiator could in theory fall to the ground. So it's worth checking. Budget about £80 in parts and whatever you want for labour. In order to remove it, the bumper does have to come off. It's fairly easy to do, but it is something to make sure has been done. And this is the front suspension. Brake discs on the front, vented. Standard McPherson stud suspension. Subframe on these cars, it's generally underneath these cars there's not much in terms of rust. Reynolds don't really have that problem. You have a wee DPF here. This being the 1.5 diesel, it has one. The petrols would probably have the catalytic converter here. back here. Very little rust. When I compare this to my mum's Honda Jazz, there was a lot more rust in it. There's a bit of surface rust in this back axle, but it's a part that can be unbolted and it can be treated at any time. Speaking of the back axle, it is very basic, just a bar. Nothing fancy about it. It does sort of explain the handling characteristics of the car. It wouldn't be one that you want to put around corners too fast. The back has drum brakes. The handbrake's easy to adjust on this car. There's still ABS sensors on the back. It's all fairly standard on the back. It's very much like a Clio underneath. This chassis is familiar to anyone that's worked on a Clio. But in general, these cars do resist rust very well. This being an 11, you wouldn't expect much rust, but the earliest examples won't have a huge amount of rust on them. And this is the wheel arch that has to come out to get the fuel filter. That's a bit of a nuisance, it being there, but when you consider where else were they going to put it, and there's just where they do it on most models of this 1500 diesel. Engine bay of the Modus, once you get these panels out of the way and the wiper mechanism, it's really not too bad. It looks worse than it really is to work on. Access, there's a few pipes and bits and pieces that are tight, but you can get at most stuff if you try. Any of these wee small MPVs or modern hatchbacks are all the same. Honda Jazz, any of the Peugeot 1007, it's all quite cramped in here, but once you start working on it, it's easy enough to do. So that's the brake fluid reservoir in there, the master cylinder. Engine, alternator and starter would be tricky to change, but again, only if you had to do it. Thankfully, haven't been an issue on this car. Timing belt, I've done the video on it. I didn't find it too bad actually. Air filter housing. That's the ECU in there. The turbo's down the back of the engine. But again, it's not something you have to change all the time. If you keep the car serviced and drive it sensibly, the turbo should last the life of the car. That's the coolant reservoir and the oil. They're accessible once you have this cover in place. This is the engine bay of the Modus when all the covers are in place. It can look a bit daunting, but you have your coolant, engine oil and windscreen washer fluid. There is still sufficient access to the battery to give the car a jump. Generally, if you're going to do any work on this car, you take them covers off and you have fairly good access to anything that you need to work on. And the 1.5 diesel engine is a good wee engine. I have plenty of relatives that drive Renaults, a few with Dacias, and this engine doesn't really give them any trouble. It's looked after. I mean, the oil has to be changed regularly, and know that there's a timing belt, but if you do look after these engines, they can last for high mileages. 1.2 16 valve in the Clio is a good engine. You can get it in this car, but it isn't great for use on motorways. This diesel is far better for if you're doing long distances. Obviously, being a modern diesel, you have EGR valves and DPFs to think about, so for short journeys it's not ideal. Then consider the 1.2 petrol. There's also a 1.6 petrol if you want to throw all your money away in road tax and fuel. I think it only come in automatic. There might have been the 1.2 TCE, which is a 100 horsepower version of the 1.2. along in the car, it's fairly quiet. You can still tell that you're driving a diesel, but if you drive it easy, you don't really notice too much engine noise. Quite comfortable as it drives along. Horsepower is plenty for a car of this size. It's not an extremely fast car, but it's more than plenty. The last Renault that I owned was a 2002 Clio Mark II, the 1.2 16 valve engine. I never liked driving it. The gear change was inclined to pop up and down even after changing the rear engine mount. And the electric power steering, it must have been a very early attempt at electric power steering. It was both devoid of feel and was weighted too heavy. It was never nice to drive, it never reacted very quick. This steering here is still electric, but it seems to react faster, and it's just a nice weight. It's not too heavy, it's nice. Gear change, it doesn't bop up and down, it's not the most precise, but it's perfectly adequate. It's nice enough to use. Definitely a lot better than the Clio that I had before. And you see on this display, when you're revving too much, it either points up or points down to tell you that you have to change gear. Nice feature of this car, although there's no centre armrest, I don't think it might have worked. With the handbrake being here, possibly could have worked, is that there's a good wide sill here on the driver's door, same on the passenger door, so you have a good space to set your elbow when you're driving along. You can rest it. Does make it quite a relaxing car to drive on a longer journey, just somewhere to rest your arm. As simple as an armrest might sound, it's quite nice to have somewhere to rest it. Now, this might not be what many Modus drivers are going to do, is a 0 to 60 test, but we'll try it anyhow. The diesel does get a bit loud at higher revs. And there's 60 now. In terms of handling, when you're on the road, you are always aware that the car is what it is. It's top heavy. It has a sort of basic suspension in the back. You press it too hard in the corners, you will feel it's not happy with it. But if you drive it the way most Modus drivers would drive it, it's perfectly fine. It does offer a very soft ride, and the seats are also comfortable. When you are in a 30 mile an hour zone or anywhere that has a speed limiter switch, turn it on and use the buttons on the steering wheel to control it. The plus and minus will just set the speed for you. I'm doing 25 miles an hour at the moment, so if I press plus, that's it set at that speed. I can press it up a bit to get it to 30, which we're in the 30 mile an hour zone. If you press 0, that'll allow me to go beyond 30, and then R will resume the speed limiter. As I drive along here, I have my foot pressed down and I don't have to worry am I exceeding the speed limit. The car will just keep it at the speed limit. Now, it won't control the brakes. If you're going down a hill, the car can go faster than the speed limit, but generally it does maintain the whatever speed you set. It's very useful because if you've someone tailgating you and you know it's a 30 mile an hour zone, you don't have to worry about them. You just let the car do the speed that it's doing and drive on, safe in the knowledge that you're doing the legal speed limit. At the moment, diesel's 109.9. When you reach the end of a speed limit area, press 0 on the steering wheel and allows the car to speed up again. You could in theory put it now to 60 miles an hour, which is the national speed limit, but it is just a handy feature. Of course, if you press the button forward into cruise control, you have cruise control operates in the same way. It just holds the car at a certain speed, which is handy in the motorway. But at the moment, with just driving to the shops and back, there hasn't been a huge amount of call for the cruise control. Corners here, and the car handles them all right. As long as you're sensible when you're driving, it's grand. It isn't going to have the handling of something like a Mazda MX-5, but it's perfectly adequate. Very economical, only costs £20 a year to tax, although I was aware that I was going to sell this car, so it is on direct debit, paid monthly. The funny thing is seeing that the DVLA charges £1.75 a month. My own 406 cost me £20 a month in tax. In terms of reliability, I wouldn't say there's many problems with these cars. They're not going to rust. Any electrical problems are going to be easy to fix. There's a good owners club for the Clio, and you can use it to get help. There is the problem with the fuse box on some Clios. I don't know if the Modus has the same problem, but it's cheap enough to get them changed. The rest of the electronics, there's a manual handbrake, manual gearbox. That display is actually fairly simple, so there's not many electrical things to go wrong. Electric windows are in most cars nowadays. Reynolds do have problems with electric windows, but there's no one-touch operation on these windows, so I don't think they should give any trouble. And if they do, there's plenty of spare parts on eBay for that. The engine's been fitted to a wide range of cars by now, so you can get plenty of parts for them. It's not actually too hard to work on. I've done videos showing how to change the timing belt, service this engine, change the radiator support, the front spring. There's nothing in this car that would make me feel, oh no, I have to do that. It's all fairly simple, easy to work on, and if you maintain it, it should last for a long time. Really are a good car if you want something that's cheap and easy to run. It's also quite safe, comfortable to drive and practical. Anyhow, thanks for listening to me ramble on about a car.